Today we are going to talk about Airflow 3's Trigger UI, how the Params has changed from the last 3 years when it was introduced. And yeah, so before getting started, let me introduce ourselves. So my name is Shubham Raj, and I am a software engineer too. I work with Cloudera, and I'm Apache Airflow committer too. And I work with particularly with the Cloudera data engineering team, where we make data engineers' life easier. They do not need to think about the infra and run their Spark and the Airflow jobs.
Yeah, and hello, my name is Scheffler. I'm Airflow committer in PMC, and on my business life, I'm working with Bosch. And it's really nice working together because we're not working in the same company, not living on the same continent, but having the same talk today. So sharing the experience and what we did as a community. So giving a bit of overview and history when we talk about Trigger UI, kind of Airflow has a history that kind of you have those scheduled diagrams, which in the kind of history was very much often used. But since the beginning of Airflow, there was always the need to trigger a workflow on demand. And initially in the old versions of Airflow 2 and also in version 1, there was always a JSON way to configure parameters for your diagram. And you can kind of could use it also in the past. And in the past, there was the hint. You could give any arbitrary dictionary and you could access that as a diagram.conf in the past in history. And then Airflow evolved over times, and there was a great talk also in last summit from Sumit. Hello, Sumit. Good that you are here. About in Legacy Airflow 2.2, the params were introduced as a separate concept, and that introduced also validation. So not only you were able to submit any arbitrary dictionary, which kind of could have a valid data or invalid data, it included then the option to validate the parameters with a schema, a JSON schema. And so in this example, copied from the docs, you could see that certain parameters need to have criteria which you can rely on. And this was the base then in Airflow 2.6. It was the AAP 50 to implement the first version of trigger forms, which kind of not only makes the validation of the parameters kind of based on the params, but also being the first entry point to render a nice form for the user. Because kind of having a dictionary might be possible technically, but you scare users away and it's maybe making it really hard using Airflow. And for this, let's start an experiment.
So yeah, before moving forward, I really want you to guys scan this and try to fill the form. You do not need to submit it, but I want to have you an experience about what I'm going to talk about. So I will have wait for a minute, a max, and we will move forward. Yeah, I mean, the main point of this form is to tell you like what is the actual experience difference you will get when you are writing a dictionary and you are filling a form. So that's where the DAG params come in picture. We make the experience for the user when you are running a DAG runs, and you have a X parameters to have it. So it's make more sense to have a form input and make it user friendly rather than having it on the JSON object or writing it there, because it's more error prone, right? So before getting started, what is DAG params and getting into it, why we do need it? So first is, when you want to customize your diagrams without changing your code, you write a single code and use the Jinja templating, and with some particular parameters change, you do not need to hard code any values, and you can have a multiple diagrams with the same DAG, just changing your parameters, whatever the use case you have it with it. The second is provide a user-friendly interface for the user. So that's what you guys just experienced on your phones, that you have a very good intuitive form, which is very easy, and you will not have that problem to fill the form. And of course, the validate input parameters before DAG execution. So there will be validations about like if it's a string, then you have to be putting it on the string and you cannot put the numbers. And so it's just making less error prone to the users. And create dynamic workflows that adapt to different scenarios. Of course, like the whatever the parameters you write in the we create a param, and there will be a dynamic form generation for it, and you do not need to take care of anything of that. We'll have a quick demo about it soon, so you can guys take a good look about it. Now, what is DAG param? So of course, by now you guys have understood it, but yeah, It enables you to provide runtime configuration to the task, and you can configure a default parameter. But apart from that, you can also change it on the based upon when you try to trigger a diagram. So it have a lot of good features, like you have beautiful UI forms. It's auto generated from the code, whatever the params class you make, you give it in the code, it will be automatic generated. The input validation will be based upon that, and of course the runtime flexibility. You can override the default values whatever it has on the diagrams page. And the type safety, it's a strong typing validation is there, so you do not make few issue errors. So this is just a snippet of how it would have looked if DAG params or diagram conf was not there, and you would have written hard-coded values for each of the task, and would have written a lot of DAGs for it. But with the DAG params, you can have it parameterized with the help of the param classes, what you can see, and which has the default value and what type of, is it integer, it's enum or minimum maximum type of array and all, right? And you can just use with the help of like pass it params and then whatever the particular value you want to use it. What are the benefits, right? So there are two segments of the benefits. One is on the user side, one is on the developer experience side, right? So starting with the user side, what are the benefits? Of course, the intuitive form is one of the good benefits. You have input validations, prevents errors before execution. You can also give a proper documentation about what you're expecting in that particular field, or what do you want the users to tap into it. And for the developers, it's no manual form creation. You do not need to take care of the manual form creation for the users who are going to run. The type safety JSON schema validation is still there, and it will validate it. And all the parameter is a centralized parameter management. You need to just give it at the one place. You do not need to have a different. And of course, you have to worry less about the edge cases. It's not the edge what Genesis keep talking about the day one. It's our edge cases what we usually fail upon. So since there is a validation upon, you will not get into the problems where it uh, get into the edge cases of the. We always have a diagram.conf. So this is a quick glimpse about what is the difference between the params or the diagram conf you can use. So diagram conf do not give you the default value support, so you can get it from the params. Validation is there, UI form integration is there, explicit declaration you can have. Of course, the templating can be done on the both the segment, and it's more safer to use the params. So coming to the trigger UI form examples. So I just have a quick UI look upon this. This is a params UI tutorial. You can see a different type of params here. And since this, you can see the red icon because it was a required text and people have not filled it. And this is flag. You will have arrays, you will have numbers, you have date, times, multiple supports for it, right? And below down you always have that the basic configuration JSON if you wanted to copy paste it a lot of times, so you can do it from here. Apart from this, what's new, right? I mean, what changed from like Airflow 3.0? What changed? So of course the imports have changed. You need to get all the things from the overflow.sdk now. And there is a type safety support on the section basis on the UI. What do I mean by section basis? I will quickly cover in the next demo. How can you make the sections on the form? And there is a bidirectional support for the configuration on the UI. You saw the JSON validation, JSON below, and the form at the verb. You can have the bidirectional conversation between them. You choose when the other one gets changed. And the revamp or the trigger form to the dialogue. I mean, if you have a single page like form, and here we have a dialogue in which it's more clear and it's more good to the eyes. So yeah, let's get started with the quick demo. I just have a simple example to show all of you. So I have written a DAG where this is for the sales report emailer, similar to what you guys have tried on your phone. So I wanted something known as region, minimum sales threshold, and send mail, right? So I will just give a title here, what title I want, and of course the default values, and the description for the users, like what they actually want to fill in that particular form, and what type. Suppose in this case it's an enum, and I mean if it's integer or it's boolean, right? And the section, what I was talking about, right? So this two will fall under the same section of a form known as sales report configuration, and this will be the by default known as run parameters, right? So this is how you can create params for your DAGs. So when we quickly go to the DAG file, this is when you click on the trigger, and this is how the DAG params will be generated. You see, you do not need to take care of the UI stuff and everything. You just need to write some code which is very minimal, and the UI will already take care of it. So you can this section. There are two sections now. This was the section I was talking about. So two of the fields which are from the sales report configuration fall under this, and the run parameters is the default. If you do not provide, it falls into this one. So you can just have the values as a required field. So I will just select APAC, and the values you can just have an integers here. And similarly as the send mail as true or false, right? And the bidirectional support I was talking about, if you just do true, so it should be true here. So it's a very simple, good intuitive form for the user experience. And of course you can trigger here the form. Hope it passes. Yes, it does. Yes.
So kind of thanks for the basic presentation, and kind of the form support has been there since a while, and now it's really refurbished and refreshed, and kind of all the features have been carried over to Airflow 3 and keeping the baseline. Outlook is still there, and kind of we know that there was a demand on, and nobody contributed this so far, is we foresee that in the future it makes sense to have a plugin support. As we also had talks about the UI plugins, it makes sense to kind of, we have basic support for strings, integers, dictionaries, whatsoever. More complex types do you need to model today again as a dictionary content type, and then you're falling back again to somebody need to type text. At least it's a basic dictionary validation, and you can have another JSON validation behind the scene, but still it has the problem that user need to understand the dictionary again. So we foresee that there might be demand for plugin support in the future, that you can have custom types for whatever needs you have integrated via a plugin into the form. And also this goes in the same direction for plugin support. We sometimes had the demand of having dependencies of fields being as a filter, to say kind of, I first select the region and then I select the city, and then probably the list of cities should be filtered by the region selected. Today, all the input fields are individually being filled and they are fully independent. But via a plugin or maybe also a backend service, it might make sense to have a dynamic lookup to whatever your customer database to validate numbers on the fly. What is missing, and there's an issue ticket open for somebody to grab for contribution, is the point of pre-filling the form with defaults. In the past, that was existing in Airflow 2, that you can form a special URL, and in the URL you could add the parameters and pre-populate it. That is not in Airflow 3, but kind of we would foresee this is hopefully coming soon, that you can render a URL and somebody can click on it and it will pre-populate so that users do not need to enter as much data. There's a PR open at the moment, and that changed the recent days. There's a bit of discussion on it. In the past, in trigger form, it was possible to select previous runs to pre-populate the form. And we had a bit of feedback and back and forth. I don't know, the contributor is probably not here, but we will hopefully have it in the next version, that if you have a previous run, that you can take that over for not needing to copy and paste all the parameters over, that you have a better user convenience for this. Yeah, and better examples. I don't know if you've seen it on the dev list, but today we have a lot of technical examples, and the target for the future is that we maybe rework all the example DAGs that we have in Airflow, and there are good examples for the trigger form, technically speaking, but they're not alongside a business case. So we want to in future remodel the examples for having better coverage for real use cases. And then there will be more form examples which are maybe matching more to real life and not being just technical blueprints. And so to speak, kind of all the trigger form depends on community contribution. So it's also a call for action. If you miss something, please contribute, and we're looking forward for your support.